Welcome to episode 2 of Paranormal Unwrapped with Chris Theresa and Jack Roth. Chris is a channel for the Orion Council, teacher, and artist. Jack is an investigative journalist, author, and award-winning filmmaker. In this segment, we explore the topic of past lives, reincarnation, and time travel. Could they be real? So this popped up in the news 3 days ago, and it's kind of exciting that this would be in the New York Post. We have the link below. So Jack, tell us a little bit about, what do you know about this?
Well, yeah, like we were talking about after our first show, we were like, well, what do you want to talk about next? And we talked a little bit, well, maybe Betty and Barney Hill, because that's always interesting. And we will talk about that. But then all of a sudden this fell into our lap. It appeared in the New York Post first, I think on Tuesday. Now it's all over the internet. So just a little background on this. So a lot of people out there know who Greta Thunberg is. Now, Greta, I think she's a 16-year-old environmental activist from Sweden, and she's making headlines because of the things she's saying. And quite frankly, she blows my mind. She's 16 years old going on 80. I mean, she is, when I first saw her, the first time I ever heard her, I had said to myself, oh my God, she's an old soul. So here I say that, right? So, and she told baby boomers, okay, all baby boomers in front of the United Nations General Assembly. She said to them, and I quote, I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit. She said, "How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words." I mean, anyway, for that alone, I love this girl. So anyway, you have Greta. Greta's making headlines in her own right, and she's an amazing person. So this photo is unearthed from, I believe it's the University of Washington, and it was taken in 1898 by Eric Haig. And Haig was this Swedish-American photographer back in that day. And it shows 3 children working in a gold mine in the Yukon Territory. And there's a little girl in the photo that looks exactly like Greta Thunberg, pigtails and all. I mean, you see her pigtails. So it's uncanny, really. It's one of these amazing things. But now it's become a big conspiracy theory. The main one being Greta's a time traveler. But I think more, kind of missing the point there, I think it's more a case of reincarnation, right? Where she lived a previous lifetime and she was an exploited child worker. She was working in really an environmentally damaging endeavor of gold mining. She was stripping the natural landscape. This is amazing. So, I mean, Krista, what do you think of this? Doesn't it raise your eyebrow when you see this photo?
You have to. It makes my head tingle right over here. And her face is exactly. It's totally mind blowing. Of course, they had really horrible conditions back in that time. And if you really think about it, was that my past life? It takes a while to put the pieces together to your own puzzle. And she's not out there talking about it, so she's not. This is really other people's perspective, and when you kind of calm down and reflect, it really makes you think, is this incarnation thing, is this true? The next Dalai Lama is chosen by giving the child objects, because supposedly it's the reincarnation of the same Lama, and he has to identify the objects that he had from his past life, and this is how the lineage is maintained. And check it out, one of my best friends looks like Henrietta Adler, and this is in the
oh my gosh,
the British History Museum. She's from Finland. She's got the Finnish colors. Jewish Museum, London. Okay. And so, they maybe have apps now that kind of face match you to someone in the past.
I wonder if she ever felt a connection to her, like that kind of thing. Because that's one of the things that, right? Like if you read about reincarnation, like one of the things, and this is the amazing thing that I thought, because I've read a lot of books on reincarnation. Reincarnation to me is one of the most fascinating things. And billions of people literally across the globe, if you're Hindu, Buddhist, you believe in reincarnation, period. I mean, you believe in it. That's part of a reality. And one of the things that I found interesting in reincarnation cases, in many cases, they feel it's one of the principles of reincarnation is that your personality traits, the way you look, your appearance, your passions, the things you're good at are the same in each life. So
yeah.
that you actually, and if you go online, you can find photos of people who say, well, this one guy said, this one kid, he was a little boy, said, I was a World War II pilot. And it's one of the famous
They
cases.
remember. Yeah.
And they remember everything, every little detail about being this guy, and he named his name, and there's no way he could have known all that. So I was going to ask you this: is there, when you talk to people, right? Because you're always talking to people, and you're helping them, and you're guiding them. Do they bring that up a lot? Do they say, I feel like whatever?
A lot of people want to be someone famous. Yeah, so it's a little bit confusing when you have, I mean, just this year, 6 people told me they're the reincarnation of Tesla now. Obviously, with this theoretical approach that the New Age is having, you can technically come back within a couple months of death, as with the boy who lived before and these World Trade Center bombing victims. They came back really quickly. They went to the spot they described to their family. That was my office. I mean, it's heart-wrenching. And so there are different sides to this coin. Some people, they really want to be something because maybe they feel this current life isn't so glamorous. But if you look into your archetypes, you can do these archetype quizzes on the internet to see if you're a philosopher, if you're a caregiver, if you're an artist, if you're a teacher. And I believe that is the sort of pattern that we take with us. So we have some kind of spiritual learning that we continue. In my research on the 4th dimension and the afterlife, we don't become all-knowing in the next dimension. We continue our process of spiritual development. We don't become omnipotent, as we have a little more access to things like shared collective thought forms and Akashic library knowledge. But as far as the average person is concerned, this was in Letters from the Afterlife through Elsa Barker, 1914, who channeled Judge Patterson. He explained to her from the afterlife, working through her hands, talking about it, is that they need energy to communicate with us. And like I said, they don't have this full access. And typically in the afterlife, the average person remembers only one lifetime. So you think, oh, when I die, I'm just going to be like an ascended master, because a lot of people believe that they become saints or demons. And the dichotomy was very, very strong in the early 1900s. So at that time, they had very strong beliefs about life and death, and seances were super, super popular. So with this New York Post case, I find it fascinating because she's actually doing it. She's doing the stuff. She's not in theory about who I could be to be special. She's at the freaking White House making demands.
Exactly. And and this is what blew me away about the photo. Okay. It's what's in the photo. What is the photo of? And here you have this girl in this lifetime, Greta in this lifetime, who is in front of the, like you said, White House, United Nations, saying, she's an environmental activist, and she's really making a difference because she's speaking for an entire generation of people that are pissed off. They're angry. They're like, why did the older generations before us, why are you now putting all your hopes and dreams on us to correct the problems that you created? Mm-hmm. So this is what she's doing now. But think about that photo. I just found this out because I researched who the photographer was. He's a Swedish photographer that took photos in the Yukon Territory, I'm assuming, of Swedish settlers. Okay. Now I know for a fact that a lot of people from Sweden came over in the late 1800s to both Canada and the United States because there was a famine in Sweden. Things were really bad in Sweden. And I know this because I live in Florida, and that's in Central Florida. A lot of Swedes came to Florida and settled in Central Florida in the 1880s.
The immigration quota was about 90% Northern Europe in the early 1900s.
It's incredible, right? So here let's so here's a Swedish photographer taking these photos. She's Swedish today. So and in that photo, she's a child laborer working in a gold mine. And you see them there working. They shouldn't be working at all, right? So that's exploitation of minors, and minors, both minors and
That's
minors.
kind of a bad joke.
No, like I'm saying, because they're minors, they're young, but they're also really minors, right? So anyway, so I'm sorry. So anyway, and then you have the fact that they're stripping, they're gold mining, which is, obviously stripping the landscape. So her past life experience, if this is Greta, now we're not saying for sure this is Greta. We don't know for sure if it's Greta, but it is compelling, right? So she's in this past lifetime, she's doing this. And you can only imagine what this little girl was feeling, right?
Oh, they
And
got
now
hip
today,
replacements. It's horrible.
I
It's
mean,
horrible.
right? So like that to me is it. I think this deserves a little bit of, whoa, let me take a look at this a little bit. I would encourage people to research it more.
But is this a way for people to get clout? I mean, she's not doing it, but for an average person, if you're if you did something really big, how long does the clout last in the
Right.
timeline?
That's true. That's true. But I think like I would think that let's say in your past 5 lifetimes, you experienced all these things. You were a victim of maybe the witch trials. And then in the 40s, you were a victim of, you were a Jewish person living in Europe in the 40s, and you were subjected again to that. So maybe in this lifetime, you're a human activist, right? You are extremely aware of and vocal about human rights, because of the things that you experience in these past lifetimes, victimization, all that stuff. I mean, doesn't it make sense that in your psyche,
Yeah.
that
The stuff that really makes you angry. And some people aren't angry. Some people feel really lonely. Like this one lady went to Michael Newton, who's famous for his book called Journey of Souls, and he hypnotized her. And as with Dolores Cannon, they regress you to early childhood to see if there's some kind of trauma because you're having emotional problems. So what happened was they started going into the in-between space, in between incarnation. And that's when the psychologist goes, whoa, why are you describing the 40s? Why are you describing the early 1900s? And they explain things about themselves that they otherwise wouldn't have access to this information. And so this is why I was talking about the fourth dimension, because a lot of millennials right now, they want to know they want to know the truth, because we've relied so much on these greater institutions through our parents. Still, my parents are like, well, it's not in Discover magazine, so how can it be true? And it's like, do you guys realize how the media has been manipulated to serve certain agendas, and people get paid to
right?
So it's not even and so we have to do a lot of internal work to get our own answers. And one of those methods is to open the subconscious mind, where the in between lives, spirit world information is stored. And so this is why simple things like meditation and yoga or working with a really, really good psychic can help. But also, as we've been discussing here, read these articles and see if it gives you goosebumps. Your body knows the truth.
Right. And I would think people should do, like, I would want to know more. Like, I want to talk to you after this and be like, okay, so we're talking to our audience now. So how would people, like you say, meditation, yoga, talking with a psychic, getting good readings, and opening up your subconscious mind, right? Because everyone, I don't care who you are, unless you totally are a debunker and you don't believe in this stuff at all. But if you're curious at all about this, how do you kind of go about trying to find out more about possibly your past lives, and how would you do that? So that's good advice, Krista, because it's a combination of things, isn't it? It's meditation, yoga, talking to the right people, right?
Yeah, some people, it seems, will trigger something in us. And some people have, what do you call it, access to information. just for example, for the star seeds, I was doing a reading for this guy who he was really benevolent. He was just a nice guy. He had 3 kids. He did everything for his wife. He was a gamer too. And we did a reading with the galactic energies. And I started telling him these star coordinates, these 4-digit numbers. It was like 1284 or something like this. And I just knew that it was connected to our Milky Way galaxy. So I looked up HR, typed in the number on Google, and what popped up was the Pleiades. And I had told him before that he is a Pleiadian. So in that case, he had access to his cosmic galactic heritage. I can't say how much of a good guy this was, or if he, what he did to have that sort of permission. Some people just kind of come in with good celestial karma somehow. Right. But as far as this earth is concerned, with your past lives, a lot of the star seeds tend to reincarnate during pivotal times, which is why so many people say, hey, I was here in Egypt. Hey, I was here in Greece. I was here around Jesus Christ time, Atlantis, Lemuria, because that's when we're going through a big transition. So as far as our personalities are, in Hinduism, they teach that we have it with 3 main bodies. We have the subtle body, the physical body, and causal body. Is the causal body in the heaven worlds, but the physical, the first 2 layers, they tend to get recycled when we reincarnate. So some of us is always out there. And so when we're talking about subconscious activations and DNA activations and downloads and permission, it's really you getting permission from your higher self. And that can be so confusing, which is why I'm teaching this in my latest online course. And so, yeah, we're about to wrap up the show. What are your thoughts, Jack? What is your advice for people who really want to believe, but they might be a little bit frightened because what are the implications of knowing?
Well, it's very frightening, right? Because you're not, people have a hard time dealing with their past in this lifetime. So imagine going back several lifetimes and dealing with all that stuff, all that karma, all that trauma. I mean, the history of the world is full of violence and human beings doing horrible things to each other. So if you go back enough lifetimes, it's going to be pretty rough. But here's what I would suggest, and I would honestly suggest that people do what you're said there to do, to reach out on a metaphysical level, because in the end, you're going to have to do that to really dig deep. But also, I would recommend, the journalist in me recommends a couple books. Any book by Ian Stevenson. Okay. He was a professor at the University of Virginia for 50 years. He did decades and decades of research on this topic. So any book by him, any book by Brian Weiss.
Yes, Many Lives, Many Masters.
Right. And also there's a couple of great books, Old Souls by Tom Schroeder, which I read not too long ago that blew my mind, and also Born Again by Walter Semku, because this stuff brings in more, especially Ian Stevenson, it brings in a more clinical, scientific look at this, and his research is incredible. So I would do both. I would read as much as I could, and I would also do the things that you're saying. I would absolutely, look into the metaphysical part of this, because that's where we're going to find the answers ultimately.
Awesome. So we want to hear what you guys think. Do you believe in reincarnation, past lives? Read the article. Is Greta a time traveler? And we're going to discuss these comments in the next episode. So if you guys enjoy reincarnation subjects, comment and hit the bell to get updated, because we're going live next Monday. So thanks so much, Jack. It's been really fun.
A lot of fun. Thanks, Krista.